Hi, I'm Kevin Tharp. I'm the program director for the Bachelor of Science in Digital Marketing Technology at the University of Wisconsin-Stout. Today, I am going to be hanging out with Kerry Fager from Thomson Reuters FindLaw, and we're going to be talking about what's kind of a new topic to us because we haven't taught this in our class before, but it's moving in that direction, and that's reputation management. So I'm going to toss it over to Kerry Fager and let him take it from there.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. And just to give a little background for me on this specific topic, even though I wouldn't consider myself having many years of expertise on it, within the past year or so, our company has really shifted focus towards this for our clients, just because it's such a growing area. And so I'm one of the main point people from our end and our team that works with clients on reputation management. And so there's a lot of things that we could talk about. Probably a good place to start, though, because we don't, for this class that we're recording this for, don't really have actual lectures that call it reputation management. I mean, maybe it'd be a good idea just define it, what it would be. And
absolutely.
Yeah, maybe you want to take a stab at that first, Kevin, and I can give you the industry side of it and what you'd consider reputation management, for set the stage for what we talk about.
Sure, absolutely. The reason that we went here is that one of the things that we try to do is keep our curriculum moving with the industry. And what we've seen over the last few years is more and more areas like social and video and like even some of the local stuff, more and more of the stuff has moved from being really isolated areas that you could really nail down as an individual area that we focus on in search. And they're moving closer and closer together. Just like everything else with technology is going through convergence, the practice that we are seeing related to this topic that we call SEO in this course is moving towards how do you establish a relationship with your external customers, and how do you make the practice of social media and video and directories and all those other things, how do they become a part of how you manage the world's view of you in a world where brand really is no longer completely controlled by the industry? How's that for a start?
I couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah, I think the key points that I would just echo what you said was just how it overlaps with all these different areas. It's local, it's social, it's looking at news outlets, which in some case, some social media platforms are also news outlets like Twitter. It's blogs, and then it also spreads into offline and PR. And so yeah, the local side of things, that's a reason why I kind of got pulled into it and working on it for our company, just because there was so much overlap there. And then the other aspect, I'm so glad you said, trying to, I think you used the word control, and usually that word will be used when referring to reputation management. And like, even if you look up the Wikipedia definition of reputation management, I think it includes the word, trying to control. But that's the thing; you can't totally control it, because it's everyone else's perception of you. You can influence it heavily, of course, but what people say about you online and what they think about you, at the end of the day, they have to make that decision for themselves.
Yeah, I think to go to a historic precedence for this, to understand my normal talk is questions is what happened to get us here. If you go back and you mentioned public relations, and really this is more in the realm of public relations than marketing for the most part. You used to have control of your brand. If we used Coca-Cola for example, Coca-Cola, it's the real thing. That used to be the brand, the message that the company put out, and they controlled, because media used to be top down. Mass media meant that I made a message, I distributed it to thousands of people, whether it was through the newspaper or television or radio or film or whatever was out there. And so I had, at that point, I mostly did have control, because we didn't have the ability as consumers to really say, no, you may be the real thing, but you may say you're the real thing, but really you're a poser. And so the history has been, and this is one of the really unique things about social media, or not just social media, but the internet. This is the first mass medium that has been omnidirectional, multi-directional, up until the point of the internet. For the most part, mass media was one direction. Someone that had the capital made the message, distributed, and the world was consumers of those messages. You hear about Web 2.0. Well, that was when the World Wide Web switched from that kind of a top-down model to where everybody was contributing to it, which is now the way that the internet works. The amount of information that is produced by what would have been consumers is tremendous. It's larger than the amount of information that's put out by the corporations. And I don't have any statistics. I just have personal experience to see that. But it's safe enough to say that the consumer is a huge factor in the way that brands are perceived, and a groundswell of positive or negative by the people who are reacting and interacting with your brand has a huge ability to change, to sway your reputation and your brand.
Yep, for sure. And clearly, when you alluded to, knowing what other people say about the business is, there's much more of that than there is what a business says about themselves. Obviously, that impacts larger brands much more than local businesses, but sometimes it can be even more impactful for local businesses if because if you're talking about a 1 or 2 location business in a small town, and they get some bad PR, that could just totally destroy them. I mean, it'll definitely hurt a big brand immensely, but they've got enough loyalty out there to the point where they'll probably recover. So
absolutely. So when we're talking about reputation management, what are sort of the definitions of the ballpark that we're talking about, just to continue framing this conversation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how I'd answer that is say that there are some things that reputation management is not. And because a lot of people, when they think of reputation management, they think of a few things. One of them may be a way to make bad publicity or online reviews, if we want to bring it closer to home to digital marketing, how to make that stuff disappear. Well, I got a newsflash for you. That's almost impossible to happen. There are some ways that, sometimes you can get stuff removed from certain websites, if we're talking specifically online. But usually what reputation management involves is doing something to combat that, negative feedback. So it's, if there was some, if your business got in the news somehow, obviously apologizing, trying to make things right, doing something to, if you have a handful of online bad reviews, let's say you're a local business, and, they're very apparent and they're one of the first things people see when they do a Google search, it's trying to get some positive feedback to sort of, push that stuff down. So that's the first thing. And those are just a couple little tactical things, on how to approach that. The second thing is that reputation management is not a tactic that you just flip a switch and suddenly you look incredible in the online world. And it's just like SEO. SEO isn't a magic wand that suddenly makes you rank. I don't even like using that word anymore, but that's another topic. But reputation management, the same thing. There is no quick fix. It is a very, very long-term strategy that you have to implement. And for each of these that I'm going through, we could take rabbit trails on any of these. And
I'm sure we will.
Yeah, yep, for sure. And then the other big one is that, we already touched on it. It's how reputation management is not about control, but it's about, influence. You can try, but you'll never be able to stop people from saying what they want to say on your business in the online world. That's not going away, because people trust online reviews so much. So I know that was sort of taking the negative approach to like what reputation management is, but that's usually how I'd answer that.
Sure. So where are we at? Let's talk about the state of the world today.
Yeah. So As far as going back to the second thing that I said, reputation management not being a tactic that you just flip a switch on. Everyone has to have their own reputation management strategy. So for most local businesses, I think, a large portion of our conversation will live around getting online reviews or how to handle online reviews and that sort of thing. And, because every business is unique, they've got to figure out what works for them. Because I work with lawyers all day long, we walk them through like what works for them depending on their different practice area. Like, as soon as you close a case with one of your clients, and that they're a satisfied customer, ask them to leave a review for you. There are a lot of policies and things that you should and should not do for different review sites out there. Yelp, for example, says you can't even ask for a review. You should just tell people to go visit your Yelp page and they should figure it out on their own how to leave a review. And so there's all those other things. That's another topic which we could get into as well. But what I'm getting at here is having some sort of strategy for how you get online reviews. And that's like one piece of the puzzle of sort of the long term of like, here's how you manage, your reputation. The other big aspect is, what do you do when you get negative reviews? You got to figure out if they're actually legitimate, if they're spammers, if they're competitors paying to, leave a bunch of negative reviews for you. I've seen that, or if they're legitimate. So, if they're legitimate negative reviews, what do you do? Well, if we're talking about Google, you can respond to them. If they're, if it's possible for you to make it up to the customer, try to do that. Worst case, responding to it will show people that, that you're cool to work with. And I'm just thinking there's several tiers of just paths that we can go down to on all these little topics here. So just stop me if something's interesting enough.
Yeah, if I can just walk in there, there's a company that I'm aware of that it's sort of a high-end business, and it deals with very important times in a person's life. For instance, say a wedding. And I think where I'm going with this is there's layers. We're kind of like that onion or that ogre. There's layers of how you're going to approach this, and what layer you're going to dig down to really depends upon how important you as a brand are to your customer and their personal life cycle. Because if you're involved with a huge area or date like a wedding, and you drop the ball, you've ruined one of the most important days of their lives. And you may have 100 glowing reviews, but you get that one glowing or that one review that says they ruined my wedding day, and that one review may be looked at a lot more strongly than all of those other ones, because it's like, I can't really take a chance on somebody ruining my wedding. Whereas if it's, I don't like the new Coke, how important that is in your life. And new Coke is just one of those classic examples of where a company screwed up. I don't even know. You may be young enough that you don't remember the new Coke thing. I don't know. But when they changed the formula for Coke, new Coke, and they got rid of the old formula, and it was just a total disaster. Well, it didn't ruin anybody's life, or it didn't make anybody think that they did. So there's different levels of importance to different things. So your business really has to understand where they sit in somebody's emotional quotient in the way that your brand interacts with that consumer.
Yep, for sure. And to take a slight detour on what you were just saying, depending on the type of business that you do, like, you mentioned wedding planner versus Coke or, versus something else. Every business owner has to acknowledge and accept is that this is a part of your business and you have to pay attention to it. If you don't want to deal with it, then you shouldn't be running a business. That's just the reality nowadays. I've had some businesses, tell me like, well, this is ridiculous. Why? I don't want anyone to leave any reviews for me. If, I don't have time to manage that, or, I'd rather them just tell me directly, or whatever reason. It's kind of too bad. I'm sorry. You probably shouldn't be running a business right now. And I know it's a bummer that, you didn't have to do this, 20 years ago on end. But for as long as businesses have been in existence on this planet, word of mouth has existed. And this is just the online version of word of mouth.
Yeah, and in that process of being word of mouth, it's got the ability to go a lot faster, a lot quicker to those different consumers, just because it's out there. So, like before, if something happened, I might write a letter to the editor, or I might call the Better Business Bureau and file a complaint. Those had limited circulation. But if I go to your Google My Business page and I leave a negative review, or your Yelp, or your, whatever, the one that's appropriate, then everybody who comes there has the ability to see that. And so it's sort of like the public square. We've talked about this, Kerry and I have talked about this, where reviews are the public square. That when we talk about control, and I've had people that were like, I want you to take that off. It's like, well, that's not something I can do. That is the public square. That is where the people go to talk. And that's the whole point. If that wasn't there, if that ability to just go and post a grievance wasn't there, then how valuable would those kind of sites be? Because then it just comes back down to the old version of brand management, where do you really trust the message that's coming out if there's no way to give a differing message?
That's right. That is a perfect segue into something I'd like to talk about for a few minutes. That's really, really big right now, and that is falsified reviews. So to your point, yep, how are people going to trust it if it's not, totally open, and anyone can, leave online reviews? But then the other end of that is, people try to game the system. And so because reviews impact what businesses people choose to work with so much, and because they also influence, visibility, if we're talking about search results, these businesses have popped up over, probably over the past 10 years, where they'll, offer to leave reviews on your business listings online for small fees. What's very interesting is there's a guy named Jason Brown who has had the beat on this stuff for quite a while now, and he's got a site out there called reviewfraud.org, and he has identified a lot of businesses around the U.S. And actually the globe, I think, that clearly have a lot of falsified reviews. He's really, really good at tracking this stuff down. And Mike Blumenthal and Joy Hawkins, these are all people just in the digital marketing industry, have helped him, track some of these down. And he actually got attention from a lot of news outlets as of late. And so there have been some features from news stations. One station actually sent some people out to a business here in Southern California, where I am. I think it was a digital marketing agency, and they went to interview them to ask them about, hey, are you charging people to go and leave positive reviews on these business listings? And it's a pretty humorous and awkward interaction that this news channel has with these people. You can watch it on Jason's site, reviewfraud.org. But it's growing and growing, and the whole problem, or I'm sorry, the reason that this is happening is because these online review sites like Google are not doing a good job at policing these. And I'm by far not the only one to call Google out in a public setting like this. It just doesn't appear to be important enough to them right now. What's important is how they can make money and their business, so that kind of makes sense. But it's causing a lot of problems for trust that people have in reviews. Even though most people still do trust reviews, it shakes it a little bit. Sometimes falsified reviews are fairly easily identifiable, but if you're just the average person, they're usually not. So this is a big thing happening right now.
I was not aware of that site. I threw it up while you were talking. I threw the website up so that people could see it.
Yeah. And one of the things Jason has offered too, for people who, if it looks like they found a network of reviewers who are just dummy accounts that are falsified reviews, that you can let him know, and he'll look into it. And he has literally a running list of hundreds of businesses like, nope, all the reviews on here are falsified, and they tell Google, him and Joy has a direct contact at Google, and she'll let them know about these falsified reviews, and it can take sometimes months for Google even to give attention to it. So,
yeah, that makes it really tough. But it's sort of typical of the cycle that we've had with everything internet, at least where it comes to the ways that people find you and evaluate you. The reason that search engine optimization even exists is because as search engines have come out, they've sorry about that. The phone was ringing. As search engines have come out, they have they create the algorithms, and then somebody tries to game the algorithm, and that. So then Google or Bing or whoever has to come up with a new algorithm to deal with the way that they're gaming with it. So the black cat thing has always driven where the search engines and such have to go, because their goal is to get you the best information possible. Other people's job is to get you their information in front of you rather than what might be the best resource for you. And that's been the typical cycle for really everything for as long as search engines have been a thing.
Yeah, that's right. And it makes complete logical sense for Google to put reviews front and center and make them a large factor in determining how well people show up in search and so on and so forth. But if they're going to do that, they've got to get their act together and monitoring some of this stuff. I know it's never going to be perfect, and that's totally fine. But we can only hope.
Yeah, well, and frankly, all the algorithms that are out there do a good job. It's like you create a problem, you create a solution. There's a new problem that comes out as a result of the solution, so you got to come up with a new solution, and so it just becomes a cycle that keeps people like you and me in business, because it gets harder and harder. I mean, this stuff has not gotten easier. It's gotten more complicated. And while specific tactics may have gotten easier, and this is sort of across the board, the thing that I've heard in all these fireside chats, the specific tactics have gotten easier and easier to do, whether it's video or social or on-site optimization or off-site. But the strategy part has gotten harder and harder because everything just keeps getting more and more and more complicated, and it creates an entire field of careers that simply didn't exist 15 years ago because, well, the whole platform didn't exist. And so it becomes how do we position ourselves professionally to be able to deal with a world that's constantly changing because of systems and people trying to take advantage of those systems.
For sure. And to your point of all these different topics being easier to do tactics but harder to manage, that is hands down the case with this. There are so many more tools that can help you manage your reputation, specifically your online reputation, than there were in years past. I could rattle off a whole list of them, but it's much more difficult from the standpoint of there are so many channels, like you mentioned earlier, to have a handle on this. Depending on the size of your business, and this is jumping ahead to something that I was probably going to end us with, but like things that businesses should do, like be on the lookout for, or things that they should keep in mind is having someone who can be devoted to this. I mean, not necessarily like a full-time person if you're just a, one location mom and pop shop, but someone who at least knows how to do this and can learn this stuff on, the reputation. It's something that you have to keep an eye on a weekly, if not daily basis. There's just no way around it.
Yeah, and that makes it really hard for the smaller players. If you're running, $1 billion business, to add a handful of people is a lot less expensive to your overall cost than if you're trying to run a mom and shop or even a sole proprietor, where you've got one person there who's creating the product, making the product, distributing the product, marketing. I mean, the one person shop with technology and communication makes it really, really hard, just simply because the complexity and the simple fact that you really can't not be involved with these. Now, the argument could be made that you don't have to pay attention to any of this and you can still run a business, but to elevate above a certain level, you just simply have to be able to get in and play this game, even if it's only at a very small level.
Definitely. And if, just to further convince our viewers, if someone is still saying, well, it's not that big of a deal, is it? If I'm just looking at, reviews on Google, oh no, it's definitely more than that. One example of a client that of ours that I've worked with, I won't name, but actually this has probably happened with several of our clients, but there was a disgruntled client of his who launched a website. It was basically a blog that used my client's name in the domain name. Simply, the whole purpose of the website was to just discredit him and to try to basically ruin his reputation and career, really. And it started showing up like as one of the top, I think, 3 or 4 search results in a branded search on Google for this guy's website. There might have been a time where it was showing higher than his actual website, which is honestly embarrassing. But that's something that if you're not looking at this stuff, you would have no clue. And suddenly your business just drops, cuts in half, maybe, depending on what, type of business you have. And you have no idea why if you're not paying attention to this.
All right. So after all those happy thoughts, I guess it just undermines the need for people who are able to look at the technology and how it fits into business and the business cycle. But really, the shoes are not that different than they ever were. You have to manage your brand, you have to manage your reputation, but the way that you do it is different than it used to be. And with all the new channels, with all the fragmentation, because that's a key element of this, is with all the fragmentation that's going on, you have to look in a lot of places to be able to just get the high altitude view of what's going on.
That's right. And that's yet another perfect segue of something I want to touch on. And this is slightly more on a positive note, but one of the tools that a lot of businesses are using these days that isn't, just keeping an eye on your reviews and having a dashboard that aggregates all your online reviews is something called Net Promoter Score surveys. And this is, it would be ridiculous if we talked about reputation management and didn't talk about these. But this is a way to be proactive about, figuring out what your customers are think about you. Without waiting for them to go and leave a review. And so, usually it just involves sending them an email and asking them a simple question. And that is, how likely are you to recommend our business to, friend, family member, or so on. And, some more sophisticated ways of getting more out of this, survey. They'll have, additional questions, can you tell us why, or so on. But then some will also have a mechanism that allows when when the customers, leave a positive response, then it'll say, okay, that's great. Would you mind going and leaving a feedback, or leaving a review for us on online sites? And so that's a huge way that businesses can more proactively, manage their reputation online. And there's lots of technology solutions, businesses out there that can help you set up a system like this. But that's something to consider for all businesses.
All right, so I'm gonna toss it back to you. You had a list of things that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah.
Let me toss it back to you and see where you want to go with the next tech.
Yep. I'm just looking at my notes here. And this probably falls a little bit under the question of what happened to get us to where we are today, and a lot of these things that we've talked about. And we touched on the reason that there's falsified reviews out there, and there's sometimes spammy reviews, is mostly just because Google hasn't paid much attention to them. But there are a lot of places that do pay attention to reviews, and we mentioned Yelp earlier, and Yelp is one that seems to be maybe a little bit more on top of the review situation than Google is. And so for example, if you visit a Yelp listing, sometimes you may even see an alert that indicates, hey, there's been a report that maybe some of these reviews shouldn't be trusted, or this business is under investigation for violating a policy, or something like that. And it seems very controlling and very invasive of Yelp, but it's their platform, and they can do whatever they want. So it'll be interesting to see if more review platforms start doing that. I honestly don't know.
And I think that is sort of in line with a lot of things that are going on in kind of the whole communication technology realm, where the bottom line is the consumers have got to be able to trust the resources that you're putting out if they're going to be your consumer. So if you get flagged as being a fake news site, or if you get flagged because of fake reviews or whatever, if the Yelps and the Googles don't take steps, the Facebooks, I mean, that's the one that's right in your face right now. If those people don't take steps to ensure the integrity, the trustworthiness of their brand, then people start flocking away. And you're seeing it with the backlash to Cambridge Analytica right now, where you had a movement of people moving away from Facebook because they felt that they couldn't trust Facebook to protect their personal information from people who would use it for nefarious reasons.
Yeah. And there are actually a lot of examples. I actually looked up some more recent ones just so we could talk about a couple of these. Another big one is of course these are big brands, and we talked about how that's a little bit different than if you're doing marketing, reputation management for a small business, but a lot of principles still apply. So the United Airlines incident, that I think was that last year that happened, or someone shared a video about the guy being dragged off a plane. I think it was last year.
It's about a year and a half ago. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. The doctor that wouldn't give up his seat and was basically beaten and dragged off the plane.
Yeah, yep. And those are, and then it's easy to criticize United for the way it was handled, because they didn't really apologize for it and just kind of tried to justify their reasoning for doing it. But those are the situations. Hopefully, no one watching this will have to, deal with something like that, or, market for a business that does something like that. But those are opportunities, they're challenges, but they're also opportunities to make more customers. Like that one's pretty extreme. We're like, how do you can't explain that away, but that's, kind of when you just have to, put some humility on and be like, you know what, we messed up, we apologize, you know, do something to turn it around and try to put a positive spin on it. And a lot of businesses do that. So like a positive example was Adidas had sent a tweet out. I don't remember if it was last year. It might have been last year, or the year before. In the past couple of years, you know, I don't know if they were maybe a sponsor of the Boston Marathon or something like that. But you know, they put a tweet out there that said something to the effect of, "Congratulations to everyone who survived the Boston Marathon." And that, yeah, did not go over well just because of the incident that had happened several years ago. With the bombing there. So, and then right after that happened, they apologized profusely. They're like, we are so sorry. We want to, you know, respect everyone who was involved in that, and that was poor choice of words, and so on. So that wasn't anything where like they could rectify, like make it up to people who were hurt in like a direct way, but at least, you know, just acknowledging it.
Yeah, we made a mistake. Yeah, I'm pulling up a thing now. That you can see. This is one of the ways that Amazon is dealing with it. And you'll notice in the kind of 2 rows below the 5 stars, you see where it says verified purchase. So what they're doing to try and address that is they're trying to say that, okay, this is somebody we know who purchased this product. So this is a trustworthy source of information. This is a review that you can have faith is a legitimate review.
Right. And to bring it back to, you know, ways that I've seen this handled for local businesses. So let's just, you know, take a restaurant, for example. You know, customer left a 1-star review because, you know, rude customer service. It was cold when they got their food, and you know, whatever else. And I've seen business owners respond to that and you know, own up to it and say, like, you know, that is not acceptable. We're very sorry for your experience. Please, and then they take it a step further and go, please, you know, let us know when you come back, and you know, your next meal is on us, or you know, something to that effect. And sometimes those customers will go back and update, you know, maybe he'll move it up to 3-star, 4-star, and those make the best customer experiences because, you know, the business went above and beyond. And sometimes those are the most loyal customers. I've heard stories of that. So
yeah, I've had similar stories. We had a former student here who's now a social media guru, and he works for, I think it's the University of Denver, doing their social media, Matthew Kaskovich. And I remember when he was a student here, I don't remember exactly what it was, but he had a bad experience with, I think it was ice cream. You know, it's like it was bad or something. And he posted out the brand name of this ice cream and said, oh, this was, you know, I had a bad experience. And there was somebody who was monitoring that brand name. And, you know, social listening is what they call it. And as soon as they saw that, that person set out to try and make it right so that the review, that Twitter, you know, it could be followed, or that tweet could be followed up with a positive one. And so when you have, we talk about social listening once in a while, and that's what we're talking about, is how do you use whatever resources are available to you to scan the environment to see what's going on. And so when we talk about social listening, yeah, it's a social thing, but what it really is about reputation management and using whatever tools are available to try and make sure that if the buzz that's coming out about you isn't positive, that you can address that, whether it's through a comment or a review or a remediation of some kind, to try and start getting that positive, you know, movement towards the positive, because buzz is actually short term, and you can turn really quick from people perceiving you as positive to people perceiving you negative, or the other way around. And that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, you pointed out, you know, a good thing with the social listening term, and that's one that, yeah, you definitely want some tool to help you with that, just because that can be extremely tedious. You know, if you're going to go out and, you know, look for people talking about you, you know, every day, that's really difficult. But those are even those interactions, yeah, are even more impactful, I think, than, responding to someone who left a negative review, because most people are not expecting a response to unless they're, tagging the Twitter handle or posting it, tagging the, the Facebook page or something like that. They're not expecting a response from the actual business, and that would just blow their mind. I know I would be, pretty blown away if I tweeted about a business and they did that for me. So.
Yeah, and it brings up, there was a famous case several years ago about a bakery owner who got into a social media fight with clients who had given him negative reviews, and the business ended up closing. And so I've talked to a lot of businesses over the years, and they're like, well, how do you deal with this sort of thing? And I said, deal with it the same way you would if they were standing in the store in front of you. You are going to convey to a lot of people, if you're doing it in the social sphere, what kind of a business you are, what kind of a culture you have, and what kind of respect you have for your consumers. So if you think of it in that way, what you're dealing with is your brand, but you're also dealing with your culture. What is the culture of our organization? Are we going to treat you with respect? Are we going to try and make things right? Or are we going to just completely disregard you? Or in a worst case scenario, are we going to get in a fight with you? Because people do. And every time I see somebody getting in a fight with consumers on social media, it's like, you have already lost, because you don't understand that sometimes it's better to be polite than it is to be right.
Couldn't agree more. And if I had a thesis to this entire subject, and this is difficult for, it puts us marketers in a difficult position, because it's, you have to have the right type of relationship with the business that you're marketing for, to say something along the lines of this. But the most important thing you can do, if all this monitoring and, trying to get reviews and stuff seems so overwhelming, best thing that a business can do is run their business well. If you're not running your business well, then, there's no point in doing any of this, because it's a lost cause. And it sounds so ambiguous to do, but like you just get your business in order, have good customer service, have quality products, do stuff on time, just those simple things. Don't want to focus on any of this stuff, okay, so be it. Like, do that instead.
Yeah, no, and that sort of has been a recurring topic that we've had in our discussions over, I don't know, we've been talking for more than half a decade now about these things and how it relates to SEO. And really, if you bring it right down to it, just to kind of confirm what you're saying, operating in the digital realm is very similar to operating in the analytic realm, the real world around you, in that you have to run your business right. You have to put quality information on your website. You have to have a good menu. You have to have good food. You absolutely have to have good service. People will tolerate mediocre food, but they won't tolerate terrible service. So if you're a place that has okay food but great service, people will come back to you. If you've got great food and terrible service, you're probably not going to make it. The best thing is to have great food and great service. And if you can combine that with a reasonable price, then you're probably going to be a successful business. Food is just one area that's easy for me to relate to, because I've seen, the whole thing. But yeah, the bottom line is, sure, this stuff is complicated when you dig into the details, but the 60,000 foot view is, if you do business well, people will do business with you.
Yep. I, as a marketer, will not, unless I absolutely have to. I don't want to and won't, choose to work with a business on their digital marketing or reputation specifically if they don't run their business well, because there's not anything I can do to fix that, and it's going to go downhill pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so I'm going to we're heading towards that hour mark. We're not there yet, but where does it look like? And this is one of my sort of canned questions that I am using in these chats. Where does it look like this will go in the future? Or better yet, where should we be looking to stay current with this whole area of reputation management?
Yeah, I think the short answer, which I'll expand on, is just more of everything that we've talked about already. So, first, more reputation channels available. Some will maybe fade away a little bit, but others will pop up. So there's just going to be more to monitor, just because of all the, just because of how impactful all the online platforms have seen things like, Amazon and Google are. Those are kind of like the representative, or you could put Yelp in the, but those are the representative, case studies to look at. Google and Yelp being for local businesses, Amazon being for, online products and e-commerce. So there's going to be more of those. There's going to be more features available when it comes to reputation management. It's more than just leaving a review. We looked at Amazon where, how they verify purchases. Now you can like reviews on some sites. You can respond to reviews. Of course, that's been around for a while, so that'll continue. Another thing that there will be more of is spam until these review platforms can catch it, spam and falsified reviews. And that's something that just, businesses need to be on the lookout for. Users will continue to, trust online reviews. Of course, some of the falsified ones will still kind of, shake up some of that trust. But for the most part, people are going to, continue trusting them. It's the virtual word of mouth, like we said. But I think probably the most impactful will be that more businesses will catch on to this, which means more competition for every business type, in the world. There are still a vast number of business types in tons of regions over the states, at least, that one business is just killing it in the online or in the review realm, and no one else has caught on yet. I didn't want to throw any local businesses under the bus, otherwise I would have mentioned an example. But you can see there are tons where one business has 70 reviews and the rest of them have one review, and just those other businesses haven't caught on, and that's just a lack of knowledge for those businesses. But more will catch on, and if you as a business owner are not getting in this right now and, looking at the long term, because you can't just get a bunch of reviews right away. It does not work like that. They'll probably all be removed because it'll look shady to Google or Yelp or someone or Facebook. So you've got to look ahead and start right now. Otherwise, you're going to be far behind. I mean, it'll be like, not having a website and it's, 2012. It's like, what are you doing? Those other businesses down the street have had a business since 2005, so you're behind.
All right. I've already asked the question of, do you think this is getting easier or getting harder? And we kind of had boiled it down to the tactics are getting easier, but the strategy is getting harder. Is there anything else that you would like to, any closing thoughts that you would like to leave us with about this or any related topics?
Yeah, one more that I just thought of, and this is specifically related to Google, and this is sort of like looking ahead to the future. It will be interesting to see how paid local search results impact reviews and managing your reputation. I think we talked about local service ads in the offsite portion of these fireside chats, and it'll just because reviews and ratings have impact search visibility so much, we'll see if they continued to for Google, or if paid really kind of takes the cake. If these local service ads expand, just because those are sometimes showing up above anything else in search results. So we'll see about that. And then the second thing that I would leave everyone with is just what we already touched on, and that is just reputation management. It's about running your business well. End of story.
Yeah, and in that way, the more things change, the more things stay the same. I would like to thank you very much, Kerry, for joining us once again for our fireside chat on reputation management. We appreciate the knowledge and experience that you and the other folks at Thomson Reuters bring to our program. My name is Kevin Thorpe. I'm the program director for the Bachelor of Science in Digital Marketing Technology at the University of Wisconsin-Stout. If you or your children or people that you know are interested in going on and continuing their education in these areas, I encourage you to check us out. Again, Bachelor of Science in Digital Marketing Technology, University of Wisconsin-Stout. You'll find us through a Google search, and we would be happy to talk to you about the possibilities of coming in and joining our program, whether it's online or on campus. This has been our 4th Fireside Chat this spring. We've got one more. Again, thank you very much, Kerry, and wish to all of you good night.